Hey everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Wise Up, a money podcast made by and for Gens Y and Z to help you be better with money. Now today, I'm going to be revisiting a couple of topics that I introduced in the second episode of Wise Up. You should revisit if you haven't seen it yet. But before we get into it, if you're new here or if you're a returning visitor, please follow, like, subscribe, share it with your friends so we can get this information out to as many people as possible. Mean the world to me, and we can help as many people as we possibly can. Now today, what we're going to be talking about, in a different way or another, are behavioral finance and social psychology, for lack of a better term. Specifically as it pertains to your spending habits, though. Now, one of the ways that I want to help you be better with money is to eliminate or at least reduce frivolous spending. First things first, before we get into the actual spending habits, we have to address a couple of misconceptions about wealthy people. Now, we assume, outside of assuming either a goodness or a badness about them, we assume that a lot of wealthy people have inherited their wealth, or at least inherited a significant portion of it. They were gifted with some aspect of it. Yet, when we look at a significant portion of the research that exists, roughly two-thirds, about 68%, are self-made. These millionaires, these ultra-high net worth individuals, largely made their own money. Less than 20%, or about 21%, made their money through a combination of an inheritance, and then investing, building their own wealth through working a business, whatever it is, and only about 10% inherited their wealth entirely. So, if you are looking at rich people, at the ultra-wealthy, and just assuming that they inherited their money, 10% inherited, sure. About 20% got to where they are with, the combination of an inheritance plus proper investing, running their own business and work. But the vast majority, two-thirds of ultra-high net worth individuals, millionaires, made their own money by themselves from scratch. They are truly self-made. And this should also, hopefully, serve as some foundational hope for you, that you can also get there, that you don't have to be born into wealth, that you don't need to be born into some high economic class in order to attain and achieve these levels of wealth. You don't have to be. Does it help if you are given, absurd sums of money like 10% of them are? Sure. But that is not a gate per se. There's no wall that is keeping you out. The vast majority of rich people in this country did it themselves. So if you want to, there is a pathway forward. So now that we've covered that, how do these rich people actually make and maintain their money? See, because we assume that rich people spend their money on luxury items, right? That they're the ones that are going out and buying every new thing possible. That's not really true. Most millionaires and billionaires are self-described, frugal people. They don't like spending money. They don't like looking wealthy. You look at pictures of Mark Zuckerberg and Tim Cook, two people who are vastly wealthy, net worths of billions. They look like they could possibly be leaving a college campus, like they're broke. Yet, they have a ton of money. And the reason behind that is wealthy people are less concerned with looking wealthy, more concerned with being wealthy. They've already attained a level of wealth that they are secure in themselves enough to not need to prove it to you anymore. And that's one of the biggest differentiators between lower class people and upper class people. Those in the upper class are secure in what they have and no longer feel the need to express it to you, to prove to you that they are what they say they are. Whereas those in lower class, well, that's where we start running into some problems. Now, that 68% statistic of self-made that I gave you, there are some surveys that say it's even higher. A survey from Fidelity Investments in 2017, 2018 found that 90% of millionaires are self-made and that only 10 to 12% inherited significant money, significant just being at least 10% of their wealth. So me giving you the low end of that range of 2/3 is precisely that. It's the low end of the range. On the higher end, roughly 90%, depending on what survey you're looking at, are self-made millionaires. So it is there for you. But again, the way that they are getting there and staying there is not the way that you expect. These people are frugal. They are cheap by their own standards. They will spend less, generally speaking, than you will on luxury items. Now, obviously, there are exceptions to the rule. People who are influencers or those who have a lifestyle creep catch up to them. What is lifestyle creep? Lifestyle creep is a social phenomenon in which, as you attain a new level of wealth, you got a raise at your new job that bumped you into the next tax bracket, you adjust your lifestyle to meet your new earnings. So as you get richer and wealthier, you start buying more expensive goods, living in more expensive housing, rental apartments, whatever you might have. Your lifestyle keeps up with your earnings, if not exceeds it. So despite the fact that you start making more, you might not be living any more comfortably than you were, in the sense of how much are you saving, how much are you investing, how big is your emergency fund, which you should have. Most people forget that. They assume, all right, cool, I got bumped into the next tax bracket, or, oh, I'm finally making 6 figures. And then they start splurging on items. That's why a few months ago, a statistic came out that 2/3 of people that were making 6 figures were living paycheck to paycheck. You would assume, hey, they're making 6 figures. They're in the top quartile, if not 10% of earners. How are they living paycheck to paycheck? Simple, because their expenses kept track with their earnings, if not outpaced them. They got so caught up in looking rich, because that's what we're taught to do, that they forgot about actually being rich. See, you can have an annual salary of $100,000 and have a net worth that isn't that high because you took on a lot of debt, you have high expense items that you're trying to acquire, whereas someone who has an annual salary of $50,000 can very easily become a millionaire by living below their means, by budgeting, by investing properly. How much you make is not a direct correlation with how wealthy you are. Those are two very different things. Wealth is how much money that you have total, is your net worth. You can make a lot of money. You can have a rich paying job. But if you spend as much as you earn or more, you're not going to ever be wealthy. You're going to be that guy living paycheck to paycheck without a cent to his name. That's just how it is. But see, I've gotten ahead of myself, and I've already started talking about behavioral finance and social psychology. Let me get back to the point here. See, we talk about luxury items. So these are luxury goods like bags, jewelry, even cars if you want. You would assume, hopefully, that high net worth individuals, the ultra wealthy, spend significantly more than those who are in poverty, those who are in the lower quartile of income earners. That is the hope, that people who are in the lower income brackets would not waste their money on luxuries. However, a Deutsche Bank survey that was published in 2017 found that the lowest quintile, not even quartiles, we split this into fifths, people in the lowest quintile, those that are making 40 grand or so a year or less, 40% of their income was spent on luxury goods. 40%. Those that were in the middle third, the third quintile, just above 50%, we can say roughly 50% of their income was spent on luxury goods. And those that were in the highest quintile, those that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year into the millions, into the billions, spending about 65% of their income on luxury goods. So sure, between the lowest quintile and the highest quintile spends about 50% more. However, they're making more than 50% more too. Again, if the lowest quintiles, those are making about $40,000 or less, and the highest quintile, I think their cutoff was $140,000. That's more than triple their income. and only about 50-55% more of an income expenditure on luxury goods. Those two things shouldn't be true. Hypothetically, again, your income, how much you need to survive, should also be a predicator of what you spent on luxury goods. Yet, people in the lower classes, economically speaking, are still spending, on average, roughly half of their income on luxury goods that they don't need and realistically cannot afford. Now, why is this? See, in my second episode, I talked about social psychology, behavioral finance, specifically as it pertained to men. Why men fall into the Andrew Tates and the other gurus of the world. And simply put, again, it goes back to being attractive to the other person. Now, what do I mean by this? There was an article written by Professor Peter Ubel in Forbes a couple of years ago, where he was describing the phenomenon of why someone in the upper class, doesn't spend as much on sneakers, bags, clothes, whatever it is, but someone in the lower class does. And that was something that he realized is just like those wealthy people who no longer need to be concerned with looking wealthy because they know that they are. Those in lower class have neither. They are both not wealthy and in general do not look wealthy. So in order to compensate, they attempt to look wealthy. And a direct quote from his article is, quote, "It is hard to attract a romantic partner if you look like a loser. It's hard to get a job if you show up in an interview looking like someone who's never held down a job." And this is true. For anyone who's ever gone to an interview, even if it's a low-paying job, you're expected to generally show up in a suit and tie. Might be different now, but when I was in high school, coming out of high school, applying for jobs, even for low-paying jobs, I was expected to show up in suit and tie. That's just how it worked. You have to. And that still exists, I'm sure, in many places today. And then especially in the dating world. If you show up looking like a loser, so to speak, your romantic options are minimal. And again, this concept, while he was phrasing it from the perspective of men, generally speaking, also applies to women. We are trying to attract people, and I'll take a step back from the romantic side of things, the business side of things as well. We are trying to attract people and make them attracted to us, either as an employee or as a romantic partner. If we look like we are less worthy or less valuable, and unfortunately we've come to a point in society where we attribute how valuable someone is based on how valuable their clothing is, our odds of success, either in that business or romantic setting, are minimal. So we keep getting caught in that trap. And there are plenty of other reasons why people get stuck into this. It goes back to also self-esteem. If you are stuck in the lower income classes, you're going to feel bad about yourself. I would assume that very few people that are in poverty wake up in the morning and go, I feel great that I'm poor. That just doesn't happen. However, if they are not currently at the ability or of the knowledge to escape from those income classes, the best option they have that they think they have is to invest in items that make them look wealthy. And I use the word invest loosely. People will refer to luxury items as an investment. They are not. I will cover that later on in this episode, but just know to start, luxury goods and items are rarely investments. They're aesthetic items. That's at best what they are. But we go back to it. We talk about self-esteem, and we again go back to the social hierarchy of needs. People want to be accepted. They want to be wanted by others, want to be needed by others, and how you present yourself and how you look is a big determining factor in that. So if you don't look the part, if you don't look like someone who's valuable, someone who can bring something to the table, again, romantically in business, your odds of success, your odds of ingraining yourself in that setting are minimal. Your odds of engendering positive feelings from the other person are minimal. And that's not a good thing. But there's another psychological reason why people buy things. Impulse purchases, something that I'm sure everyone is familiar with by now. Buying luxury goods is a hedonistic action, meaning when you buy something, you see an expensive item, you buy it, it sends a rush of dopamine to your brain. It makes you feel good. It has a positive chemical feeling that is created. So it's a neural feedback loop. You buy expensive item, you feel good doing it. It literally is a drug. Buying expensive things is a drug, technically speaking. And unfortunately, people are, I don't know if I want to say smart enough, but socially conditioned enough, or even subconsciously, to not want fakes. Now, there was a Yale study that went to this, but I'll give you an example. Most people, in determining if they should get a fake luxury watch, fake bag, whatever it is, or the real thing, will generally pass up on the fake, despite the fact the appearance is largely the same. Why? So the Yale study was done with children, and they took away the child's favorite toy and convinced them that there was a cloning machine that they had that could make a direct replica of that toy. It was completely the same. The children refused to accept the duplicate as identical, despite the fact that they were actually identical. Now, that sentimentality of the item, in this case the toy, is what drove them to seeking it out. It's the same thing with luxury items. The sentimentality of being accepted in social circles and being wanted in business and in romantic relationships provides the authenticity of the item. Even if the appearance is identical, because you know authentically it is lacking, you will not want it. And that is a truly brilliant piece of psychology. But now we keep digging into why luxury goods are so expensive. There's a concept, a behavioral bias, known as the price-value bias, where we assume that if a product is priced egregiously high, let's say, that there has to be a reason for it. That if it is priced in the same realm as luxury items, even more so, there has to be a reason for it. That it needs to be valuable. However, if that same item, literally the same item, the same production costs and all, meaning the cost of goods, the cost of labor, whatever it is, if that same item was priced less, meaning that it was probably more affordable for you and more in your price range, it would be less attractive to you financially. Because you now assume that it's less valuable, that it's tacky, that it's cheap, because of how it's priced. The quality of the item has not changed. Only the price has. And this is how a lot of luxury designers price their objects. It has nothing to do with quality of the item. Nothing to do with how much it cost to put it together, how much the labor cost was, although that's a pitch they'll give you. It has everything to do with placing it in a similar bracket with other similarly priced items or higher to make it seem just as valuable. That's literally it. What you are buying is the perception of value. You're not really buying the value itself. You are buying the perception of value. And I've spit around a couple of times how this really isn't true for a number of things, and we are going to get into that. And the way we're going to do that, fundamentally, is by addressing the number one greatest scam in mankind. Diamonds. I think that every woman in America just perked up. Diamonds are perhaps a necessary, at this point, foundation of relationships in America, if not globally. whenever you get engaged, you present your partner, or as a man, you present the woman, with a diamond engagement ring. That is just, that's how we do it. As kids, we're not really ever taught why. We're just told that you propose, you buy a diamond ring, and then you do the thing. We've never taken a second to take a step back and actually ask, why? Why diamonds? There are plenty of other precious metals and stones. Sapphires, rubies, emeralds, just to name a few. Why diamonds? And second, or perhaps more importantly, are diamonds actually precious metals? Now I've definitely got the attention of everyone in America. Let me start there. According to the International Gem Society, by their own standards, diamonds are not precious. They're not precious stones. They're not rare. Diamonds, in reality, are one of the most abundant minerals, because that's what they are, in the world. They are nowhere near as scarce as an emerald, a ruby, a sapphire. Absolutely not. They're not rare in the slightest. And that's why in the early 20th century and the late 19th century, most people didn't get engaged with a diamond ring. This is a very new phenomenon. See, back then, less than 10% of engagements occurred with a diamond ring, changing hands, so to speak. But that changed in the early 1900s, in the early 20th century. And it is quite literally the greatest marketing campaign in the history of the world. Now, let me give you the history behind what I am talking about. See, in the late 20th century, really, in South Africa, we started finding diamonds. Oh my lord, finally, we have found them. And they started mining for diamonds in South Africa. Yet, we started running into a couple of problems. Again, in America back then, no one needed diamonds. No one wanted diamonds. They weren't a necessity. They weren't even wanted. So how did all of this change so drastically? Well, first and foremost, let's get familiar with our key players in the diamond story. De Beers International is a global monopoly that, up until the late 20th century, owned about 80% of the world's diamonds. As of today, they still own about 40 to 45% of the world's diamond supply. Now, what happened in the very beginning is that they started finding these diamonds in these South African mines. But what they realized was, instead of immediately selling them, let's hoard them. Quite literally, let's put them in vaults in London and not release it to the public. Let's just not do it. So they continued mining in the early 20th century. They kept mining, but again, people didn't want them. So suddenly they've cornered the market on diamonds. So at that point, Harry Oppenheimer, the company's CEO, went to probably the greatest advertising agency in the history of mankind, in N.W. Ayer and Son, or just Ayer. These are the people who were at the time also making cigarettes, the God's gift to mankind. The slogan, "I'd walk a mile for a camel," was making Camel cigarettes the most popular in America. And they got together and they started thinking about a slogan. What can we do to make diamonds valuable? We have to do something. We own the entire market. We've cornered all of it. We own, at this point, 85-90% of the entire diamond supply in the world. What do we do? And then they came up with that infamous slogan. A diamond is forever, or depending on how you've heard the alteration, diamonds are forever. And that slogan caught fire. It was named the best slogan of the 20th century. It did its job. Every single person, alive or dead at this point, who has been engaged within the last 90 years has heard the phrase diamonds are forever. Yet, I would guarantee that they've never heard of Ayer and Sons. Guarantee it. I would also largely guarantee no one's heard of De Beer International. And that is, again, the greatest bit of advertising that's ever been done. That you've heard of the slogan, but not the people who created it or why they created it. And De Beers got super smart, because after they created the pitch, they started going into high schools, talking to these young, impressionable men and women, talking about how diamonds were a social status signifier. How young men should spend a month's salary on a diamond, a stigma that exists to this day. And I'll actually build on top of that. For a period of time, De Beers actually hyped themselves up even more, saying that you should spend 2 months' earnings on that wonderful piece of carbon we call a diamond. They were going in on the ground floor, talking to young teenagers who then would be going into the world as adults and buying their diamonds. They got in on the ground floor. People who were already married, they didn't care about. It was, how do we get to the impressionable youth? If that sounds familiar, that's because that's what happens today with literally any product. Find an influencer, put it on TikTok or Instagram, and try selling it to kids. They don't know any better. They're impressionable. Their minds are still moldable. They'll do whatever you tell them to. Again, brilliant marketing and advertising. That now we've all been convinced that diamonds are exactly that. They're rare. They're a signifier of how much you love the other person. And if you really, really love them, you'd buy them the biggest rock that you can. A carat or more. Literally, was you'd have to get the biggest rock possible. But again, we forget diamonds are not rare. In the slightest. What existed and what happened to make them seem rare was some of the greatest price fixing the world has ever seen. Again, because what happened is when De Beers mined all of their diamonds, they would send them to one centralized place. And they would only allow a certain amount of diamond dealers in to see the diamonds, to see how much they had. They would only release a certain amount at a time. And what happened, literally, is by the 80s, De Beers had cornered the market enough that they didn't want any more diamonds coming out. So they started shutting down mines that could have gotten more diamonds. They started firing employees. And then when new mines popped up that weren't owned by them, they flooded the market with diamonds to put their competitor out of business. Everything that they was the epitome of anti-competitive, behavior. Everything that they could have done to set the market in their favor, they did. So on top of holding all of these diamonds in their own warehouses, shutting down mines, quite literally, even from other people, if they heard that someone else had found a diamond mine, they would buy them out just to shut them down, so as to not risk new supplies of diamonds entering the market. And then in the off chance that they were late, someone was able to open a new mine and start releasing new diamonds onto the market, they would then flood the market with their own diamonds to drive the price down, because they know that they had the capacity and the monetary backing to lose money. They controlled supply and demand, both sides of the economic equation, for how much something should be valued. They first artificially created scarcity. They limited supply, which would create demand. And then, when it was beneficial to them, they would artificially boost supply, which would drive down demand, thus cratering the price of diamonds so they could buy out their competitors. Everything they could do to gain an upper hand, they did. And it was, again, brilliant. In the 1950s, perhaps the woman who made diamonds, Marilyn Monroe. That 1953 movie, probably didn't even know it was from a movie, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, where she sang the song Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. That song is also iconic. I can also guarantee you didn't know it was part of an advertising campaign. I would guarantee it. But Marilyn Monroe, as hired by De Beers International vis-a-vis Ayers and Sons, was literally just a mouthpiece to sell diamonds to the younger generations of all classes that you needed as a man. You love the woman you're with, give her a diamond. The bigger, the better. And see, that's the thing. See, I just talked about how everything is artificial here. That does go back to the entire concept of how these things are priced. See, in the 1970s, there was actually a survey done to see what's the markup here. You guys are getting your diamonds from wholesalers. What's your markup? The markup was usually between 100 and 200%. There is no set value. That's why you can walk into one diamond retail company and see the exact same color, cut, carat, clarity, I think those are the 4 C's, diamond for one price. Go into the next one and see the exact same diamond, essentially, for a completely different price. Because there's no set value. See, for precious metals, gold and silver, they trade in the markets. They are a commodity. We can turn on Bloomberg, Fox Business, CNBC right now and say, what is the price of a troy ounce of gold or silver right now? And I can tell you, because there's a trading market, it's liquid, you can buy and sell things. Diamonds have no such thing, because again, they're not precious. They're not a commodity. They're a joke. The second you leave the diamond retailer that you bought your diamond from, the price has immediately, even if it's still in the box, the price has immediately depreciated by between 50 and 60%. So you spent $12,000 on your diamond, you walked out, and if you tried reselling it again as is in the box, you'd get maybe $5,000 for it. Nothing changed. It's literally the exact same diamond, but again, there's just no value. There's no real economic backing behind diamonds. Now we go back to it again. What about those 4 C's that you just mentioned? Carats, color, cut, clarity. We can't agree on that either. Again, that was another survey that was done in the 20th century where they polled jewelers, retailers, and they found a difference of 100% in grading investment grade diamonds. Oh, that's a DEF. No, that can't be. It's a GHI. Oh, no. No one agrees. You literally, do you think that just because you got a certificate saying that you got it's a real diamond, that it's somehow valuable? No. Congrats. You got a piece of paper that says it's a GIA certified 2.1 carat DEF diamond. Mazel tov. Means absolutely nothing. You just got one of the bigger regulatory agencies to come to a consensus and say that your diamond, your expensive piece of carbon, is a truly expensive piece of carbon. There's nothing else to it. We just magically got together and agreed, hey, is this what we're going to charge for this? Actually, no, I don't think so. I'm going to charge 50% more than you. But they're not going to notice, right? No, I don't think they're going to notice. And up until a decade or two ago, no one noticed. Thankfully, in the last 10, 20 years, we've started coming up with alternatives to diamonds. Lab-grown diamonds, which are literally, anatomically, the exact same things as diamonds, except they're not mined out of the earth using child labor in war-torn countries. The things that we normally talk about with diamonds, all of the negative socio-political issues associated with them and how they've been used to fund wars. Yeah, so we don't do that. They're real diamonds that are just finished in a lab. Or even more popular nowadays is moissanite, which is 80 to 90% cheaper than a diamond. Roughly as hard. If we're going on the hardness scale, a diamond is a perfect 10, moissanite is a 9.25. And real talk, no one can tell the difference. Cubic zirconium got a bad rap in the last generation or so as an alternative to diamonds because it looks more like glass than a diamond. Again, as technology gets better, we can create alternatives to diamonds that look very similar to diamonds that are much better than diamonds in literally every facet. Yet, as of the most recent survey that we have, 80% of all engagements in America, and I'm shocked that number is only 80%, takes place with a man handing a woman a diamond engagement ring. So De Beers did its job. They convinced you that what was otherwise a small and dying industry that was on its last breaths, especially coming out of the Great Depression, is now suddenly an ingrained part in our culture. It's insane. And again, De Beers was caught fixing the market. They pled guilty. They paid out $10 million in fines. I mean, for them, that's literally nothing, given that they had the entire multi-billion-dollar market cornered at one point in time. But, fine, whatever, guys. We fixed the problem. We fined them $10 million in 2004. And they made a pinky promise to stop being a monopoly. That's literally how it went. It's the greatest grift of all time. Quite literally. Diamonds should not exist. The only reason why you propose to the person you love with a diamond ring is because a bunch of rich white dudes back in the 1940s determined that you have to. That unless you as a man, or your partner as a man, buys an intrinsically worthless rock, his life is a failure and he doesn't love you enough. He's not valuable enough, or he doesn't value you enough because he didn't buy you a mineral. Oh, and fun fact, the entire concept of diamonds being forever, yeah, that's actually not true. Diamonds decay quicker than a good portion of other rocks. They lose their color, they scratch, they chip. There are plenty of videos of middle-aged dudes just breaking a diamond with a hammer. They're very brittle. They are not forever. And even if you wanted to assume that diamonds being forever is what gave them their value, so are shark's teeth. There are shark's teeth that are tens of millions of years old. What's your point? You're not proposing with a megalodon tooth. Just because something can last for a while doesn't make it valuable. Quite literally, the greatest reason why you buy diamonds for the person you love, or why the person that you love buys them a diamond, is because you were told to. That's literally it. Cecil Rhodes, the original founder of De Beers International, it changed the world. By going into South Africa, which again is an apartheid country, creating their mines, buying out all of them, accumulating the world's demand, creating that central repository called the Central Selling Organization, the CSO. This man single-handedly changed the entire history of the world. Outside of Tesla, who up until 10, 20 years ago, everyone had forgotten about. Now that there's a car company named after him, everyone remembers. This man, Cecil Rhodes, probably just as influential in the history of the world, if not more so. That is a hill that I will very likely die on. And again, you just have to look at how things are. If you ask any of your friends who got engaged with a diamond, the vast majority will say that they did. If you even posit the question of why people do, or if you should be, you're going to be looked at like you're crazy, like you're destabilizing a foundational nature of relationships and marriage in America. I have been there. It's a very fun conversation to have. In conclusion, just on diamonds, I'm going to shift to another topic entirely in a few seconds, but just to conclude on diamonds. In the 20th century, because of the greatest advertising campaign ever, with essentially two slogans, the first being Diamonds Are Forever, and the second being the name of a song sung by Marilyn Monroe, and Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, we are now convinced that if you truly love someone, if you value your relationship with them, in order to marry them, you need to give them a rock that is not rare, and that in reality is still sitting in the cratefuls in a London warehouse. They're not rare. They're not a good investment, because again, the second you walk out, it drops 50 to 60%. The real sale market is horrible. You want a diamond ring? Hop on any secondary market and you'll get diamonds for 80 to 90% off. In the setting. So with the actually valuable part of the ring being the gold band, platinum, whatever it is. It's just not worth it. We got gypped. And as you've noticed, a good portion of the reason why people bought into it is because it tapped into their self-worth. Again, that telling a man that he's not valuable enough, he hasn't made it in life, he's not successful enough, and simultaneously doesn't love his partner enough if he doesn't buy them a diamond. It's manipulation. It's pure and simple manipulation. But because it's a diamond, we accept it. Now, let me shift into another topic that we go back to that also relates to luxury brands and what we spend on things. I am sure that most people watching this show today have heard of Ray-Bans or Oakleys. You know, they're some of the most famous sunglasses in the world, especially this country. And they are, depending on what listicle you're looking at, numbers 1 and 2 in terms of sunglasses. What if I told you those are the same company? A lot of you just paused. What if I told you that not only are Ray-Bans and Oakley the same company, but that Ray-Bans, Oakley, Dolce & Gabbana, Versace, Ralph Lauren, Tiffany & Co., any of the Armanis, Polo, DKNY, Chanel, Michael Kors, and the list goes on, are all the same company? You'd think I was insane. But that is exactly what happens. There's a company called Luxottica. Luxottica. So it's an Italian eyewear conglomerate based in Italy that owns all of these brands. See, their in-house brands are Oakley's and Ray-Bans. The top 2 sunglasses in the country are actually the same one in-house brand of a company. But other in-house brands will include Parasol, Vogue Eyewear, Costa del Mar. But then, other brands that license their name, meaning their logo, to Luxottica, include Giorgio Armani, Armani Exchange, and Emporio Armani, literally all of the Armanis, Prada, Ralph Lauren, Tiffany & Co., Versace, Polo Ralph Lauren, Dolce & Gabbana, Coach, Chanel, Burberry, Brooks Brothers. Essentially, what is happening is one warehouse, one company, creates all of these sunglasses, and at the very end, they just stamp a different logo on them. That's it. That's literally it. Those Ray-Bans you're buying are identical to the Oakleys because they're literally made in the exact same factory. The only difference being what is stamped into the side at the very end. That Tiffany & Co. designer sunglass set you just bought, the same thing as the Michael Kors, the Polo Ralph Lauren, the Chanel, Burberry, Coach, Dolce & Gabbana, because it also was made in the exact same factory and then just stamped at the very end. They're identical. Imagine if this happened with cars. If you had Honda, Toyota, Nissan, all made in the same factory and then just kind of shipped out. You ever look around and go, wait, how are these different companies? They're literally the same thing. They use the exact same materials. They're the exact same body type. It's the same thing. And yet, with sunglasses, we assume that's entirely different. Luxottica has cornered the market. They account for 60% of all sunglass sales in the US. The next largest is another conglomerate called Safilo, which holds, you might have heard of some of these companies, Fendi, Fossil, Givenchy, Banana Republic, Tommy Hilfiger, Juicy Couture, Dior, Saks Fifth Avenue, Boss, Jack and Kate Spade, Swatch. I can keep going. So, similar to with Luxottica, you think that you bought a really nice Fendi sunglass, or a nice Fossil, or a nice Jimmy Choo, nice Banana Republic. They're all the same sunglasses, made in the same factory, the same materials, by the same people. So the production cost of materials used and labor, identical. Yet, I guarantee you, unless there's some more fun price fixing done, there's probably going to be a price point difference between, I don't know, a Fossil versus a Jimmy Choo or a Tommy Hilfiger and a Dior. Despite the fact that they're literally identical. Literally identical. Let's move on to handbags, one of the other favorite in luxury items. When you're asked, or when you ask in general, what makes luxury handbags so expensive? The answer is, it's the materials used. It's high quality leather that is hand stitched in Italian. And stop. Fun fact: most of those bags are not actually leather. That's a fact. If you check the labels on, say, a Louis Vuitton bag, it's more of a coated polymer that is more similar to plastic than it is leather. And I say Louis Vuitton specifically because there was an experiment where an actual leather worker who owns his own leatherwork company bought a $1,700 Louis Vuitton. And then he broke it apart, literally in his workshop. He tore the leather apart, he tore the inside materials apart, and then he went about testing every bit of material piece by piece to see what the value of that material actually is. And he guesstimated the value of all of the materials, the inside lining, the outside lining, the leather, the coated polymer, to be about $70 worth of material. All of the zippers, metal buckles, things like that. You put another $30, we're at $100. And then he assumed his labor would cost him $70 to put everything together. So he's at $170, and he bought the bag for $1,700. This actually makes sense. There was a CBS News article published back in 2016 where they actually went down the breakdown of how much bags cost. On average, of a designer bag, materials will set you back about $33. Labor will set you back $30, transit will set you back $11, and then duties will set you back about $5, for a total cost of around $81. Where the average retail price for that bag that cost them $81 was $970. Or, roughly, 12 times a markup, 1,200% markup. I don't know if you heard me correctly. These bags are not even worth half of what they're selling for. They're not even worth a tenth. A tenth would be optimistic. These bags are worth a 1/12 of what they're selling for. And this applies to even the most high-end bags on the market. See, at this point, Hermes owns the luxury bag section, at least the high-end luxury bag section, with their Birkin. If you have existed in the last generation or two, and you have been looking into luxury handbags, Birkin bag has been number one. As of 2016, a starting price for a Birkin bag was $7,000, with some already going up to over $300,000. Yet, at the exact same time that the starting price for a Birkin bag was $7,000, an equity analyst at the bank BNP Paribas looked at the production cost, again, which goes into materials and goes into labor, shipping, whatever else, and found that the production cost of that basic $7,000 bag was $800. So again, fair as a loose word. Even assuming for that egregious 200% markup we were talking about with diamonds, would set it at about $2,000 for the bag. They're charging you $7. A bag that, before this, the basic luxury bag that you can buy for $700, $800, $900 will probably cost them $60 all in to make, produce, and ship. You're getting shafted. And this is why we make a full circle back to how this started. Rich people aren't the ones, in general, who are letting themselves get caught buying luxury goods, because they know that these luxury goods aren't made for them. They're made for you, the lower and middle class. See, these luxury brands, the Hermeses, Dior, Chanel's, Cartiers, whatever it is, these luxury brands don't exist in spite of growing wealth inequality. No, they exist precisely because of growing wealth inequality. Because so many people are dying to look wealthy. they know that you're going to keep buying their bags. There was another study that was done where they found that in places that had the highest levels of wealth inequality, where the lowest class was very poor and the upper class was very rich, places that had that highest level of inequality were the places where luxury goods were the most Googled. Because again, those at the very bottom of the economic barrel were looking up and going, I want that. Or even if I can't have it, I want to look like it. And then they get caught in that vicious cycle of trying to look rich instead of trying to be rich. The average person, we make a lot of jokes about how not spending $5 a morning on coffee is going to make you a millionaire. Sure, in different hypotheticals, fine. But if that small reprieve from reality of having someone else make your coffee or going out once a week with friends to allow you some mental headspace to get through the day-to-day of your life is what allows you to function, fine. That's not what's going to get you. What's going to get you is trying to look rich instead of actually trying to get rich. We spent so much time conditioning people that they need to buy a certain item, dress a certain way in order to look valuable and to look wealthy, while simultaneously, intentionally forgetting to teach them how to actually be wealthy. And that's something that I'm trying to correct here. So to kind of summarize all of this, similar to the second episode I gave of Wise Up, much of our purchasing habits in America today, especially for the lower income classes, are marketing. It is someone in an advertising agency or someone, a guru, as they like to be called, coming together and trying to figure out how to take advantage of your insecurities. How do we take and specifically pinpoint those weakest points that you have, where you feel like you're not attractive enough, you're not valuable enough, you don't present a level of worth that's high enough? How do we tap into that and then make you feel like you would do anything to fix it? And you do it. Again, if you walked up to any middle-class person who's got a Louis Vuitton, a Versace bag, and a diamond ring on their finger and asked them, if I gave you the option of giving you, generic bags and let's say a moissanite ring, and you had the opportunity to invest that difference that you would have saved by not buying those high-end products, I would guarantee most people would say no. They would prefer to look rich. They would prefer to keep up with the Joneses, to put on that social facade of being valuable. And I'd like to correct that. You are not valuable because of what designer bag you're wearing, or what top you're wearing, or how much you have in your wardrobe. Financially speaking, what makes financial value increase is how much you have invested or saved. The biggest creative of millionaires, given that most of those millionaires are self-made, are proper investments into a 401k and IRA. Things that are not sexy. It's just monthly contributions, living below your means. That's it. That is a quick way to actually have a high net worth, a high financial value, but on a personal level. Don't get sold this nonsense that in order to be valuable, or to prove to someone that you truly love them, you need to buy them something that's valuable. It's not true. Let me speak to you directly. If you think that the person that you're with would not be with you, if you could not buy a certain expensive luxury item for them, they're not the person for you. They don't deserve you. That's not a level of stress you need, because that cycle is not sustainable. If you're in the lower class, especially, or even the middle class, and you are attempting to always go out of your way to buy expensive items to prove that you love someone enough, that's a real quick way to go broke. Don't do that to yourself. If someone truly loves you, they will be with you regardless of whether or not you buy them a rock that spent 2 months of your salary to get. And that is all that I have for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Again, if this is your first time, second time, or if you're a repeat listener, please do me a favor. Like the channel, subscribe to it, follow it, share it with your friends, so that we can hopefully help everyone wise up. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you on Wednesday. Have a good one.